Growing up, one of the most painful struggles I went through was having a binge eating disorder. I always loved food as a kid and it was one of my biggest sources of comfort, but I never struggled with binge eating. It was only when I started going to the gym and dieting for the first time where that cycle started to start. I would try to get lean over and over again, but the more I pushed myself and the more I tried, the more this cycle repeated itself. Now, if you have this problem, you'll know the pain and struggle, but I'll detail out what a binge actually looks like, because a lot of people have misconceptions. A lot of people think that it's only when you go through a whole bag of crisps or you eat a whole bar of chocolate, but it's much worse than that. A binge is when you are sitting in your kitchen, or you could be in your room, and you get this craving for food, and then you eat one thing, and that one thing turns into two things, and more and more. Maybe you raid the whole kitchen, maybe you go to the shops and spend £20 worth on food, and before you know it, you've eaten 5 to 10,000 plus calories in one sitting. And then you're lying in bed or sitting down, you're barely able to move because you're so uncomfortable. You've got this really bad pain in your stomach, you're sweating, you feel ashamed and terrible about the actions that you've just done, and then you have a terrible night's sleep because you've just jammed a load of junk down your throat, and you wake up the next day really tired, you're still sweating, you've got a lot of brain fog, you're really uncomfortable the whole day, and this can lead into a cycle of binge eating. I remember when I was growing up and I was 17, 18 when I first started dieting, and my mum always stocked up the cupboards with nice treats and nice food, and she must have woke up in mornings thinking, where the hell has all this food gone? And little did she know that I had gone through it all in one evening. It's like your brain just goes into complete zombie mode. That rational prefrontal cortex part of your brain switches off, and that animal part of your brain that only seeks pleasure and dopamine is on for that hour or two. And the thing is, with binge eating, it's rarely spoken about. 2% of the population have it. That's what I got from ChatGPT. And this is even more common with people that are dieting and trying to lose weight, obviously. It can feel like no one else can relate, because when you say, oh, I binged last night, people assume that you only ate like 500, 1,000 extra calories. They don't know that you've done 10 times more than that. Unless you've actually done it, you don't know the shame and the guilt that comes the next day. So it can be hard to reach out to people. It's almost like any other addiction. But I've gone through the trials and tribulations of trying to stop binging. I suffered with it for many years, but I've lost 17 kilos in prep for my first bodybuilding show, and I've not binged one single time, which I'm really happy about. And I've learned a lot of things along the way. So if you watch this video, I'm sure it'll be valuable to you and it will help you to stop binging. Okay, the first cause of binge eating is genetic. So some people are just born with more hunger hormones. There's a hunger hormone called ghrelin. Some people just produce a lot more ghrelin, and their bodies like to keep them at a higher level of body fat percentage. This is definitely the case for me. I've never naturally been lean. It's always taken a lot of discipline and, sacrifice to get down to a good level of leanness. So this might be the case for you too. The second cause of binge eating, which is probably the most prominent, I've seen this in myself, is the perfectionist mindset. So this is when you go on a diet and you think, okay, I'm never going to eat anything unhealthy ever again. I'm going to stick to these exact amount of calories every single day. And this can lead to a lot of problems, because if you eat one unhealthy thing, or you just go over slightly over your calories, then that's what can start the binge eating, because you're like, well, I'm not perfect anymore. I might just fuck it up and binge eat, because now you've told yourself you've failed and you think, okay, well, I've messed up now. So I might just, go over and over and over. And before you know it, you've eaten a lot more than you planned to. So instead of just going over by 500 calories, you've gone over by 5 or 10,000 calories. So you've 10 or 20x'd the damage. And now you've put on a pound or 2 pounds of fat extra. Whereas if you just went over 500 calories, that might have only just brought you up to maintenance calories and you would have been fine and there wouldn't be any damage at all. And there's multiple causes of perfectionism. So the first one is social media. Whenever you look at social media, it's loads of curated images and videos of perfect physiques, the best physiques on the planet, and they're all edited to make themselves look a lot better. They're in good lighting, they've got a pump, and you think to yourself, well, why aren't I like that? And that's what can lead you into trying to perform perfectly, because you see these perfect physiques online. The second one is the all or nothing mindset. So I had this when I was a kid. I would either study very hard for an exam or I would do nothing at all. There was never any in between. And maybe you're the same type of individual as well, where you think, if I'm going to do something, I have to be all in or it's not worth it. And you can tell if this is you. Like, there will be patterns in your life where in any area you're perfect for a week, you're doing everything possible, and then for 3 weeks you do absolutely nothing to move the needle, and you keep repeating that cycle. The third one is low levels of dopamine. So we live in a world of instant gratification, whether it's pornography or Netflix or junk food or social media. There's all this instant pleasure surrounding us and tempting us all the time. And when you constantly indulge in all of that, you release a lot of dopamine, but your baseline level goes down and down and down. So binging can occur when your baseline level drops and you feel quite depressed and you're looking for that escape and high, if you will. And that can be another cause of binge eating. And the fourth one, which is one that I don't actually know much about, which I'm very fortunate, but it's trauma. I know a lot of people that suffer with binge eating have been through trauma in the past, and that can be a common cause as well. Okay, how do we fix binge eating? There's been multiple things that I've done in the past to try and fix it, and these are the best ways that I've found that have been really, really effective. I've tried therapy before and it didn't work. I wouldn't recommend therapy unless you maybe have experienced trauma in the past. But when I had this meeting with a therapist, I was saying, you know, I really want to overcome this. It's been holding me back for a long time. And she asked, well, you know, what was happiness like when you were a 10-year-old? And I thought, I don't remember, right? I've got no clue how happiness felt when I was a 10-year-old. I don't actually remember that far back. And I didn't find it very useful at all. Maybe it just wasn't the best fit for me, but I found these strategies work a lot better. The first way is to make sure you're not in too big of a calorie deficit. If you push it too far, it's only a matter of time. The floodgates will open when you go over your calories at some point and you'll binge. So you only want to create a deficit of around 500 calories if you have a history of binge eating. Like, don't go too far. Otherwise, you're only increasing the chances that you'll binge eat. Don't make the diet too extreme. Stop this instant gratification mindset where you want to change and transform your whole physique within a month. Think, what would the version of me 6 months down the line want? And act in accordance with that. Because the weeks will fly by. The days are slow, but the weeks will fly by, I promise you. And like I said before, with genetics, some people just produce more ghrelin than others. So there's a couple of things you can do to mitigate that. I've made a whole 10-minute plus video, a guide on how to reduce hunger while you're dieting. So after this video, definitely give that a watch because I go in depth and in detail. But I'll give you 3 things right now that will help a lot. So the first one is eating very voluminous but low calorie dense foods. So these can be huge bowls of salad, sugar-free jelly, anything that has a lot of volume but a low amount of calories, and this will help keep you full and send signals to your brain that you're full and you can stop. The second one is to eat protein and a lot of fiber. This does the same thing as, you know, high volume, low calorie dense foods. And the third one is to make sure you're hydrated. Drink a lot of water. 0 calorie drinks help a lot as well because they're carbonated. But those are just 3. If you want more of those tips, go to that video after this one. Okay, the next way to overcome binge eating is switch from a perfectionist mindset to a progress over perfectionist mindset. So Winston Churchill, funnily enough, actually has a quote about this. He says, perfectionism is the enemy of progress. And it could not be more true. When I look at my own life, in all areas, relationships or dieting or going to the gym or work or social media, whenever I've just focused on, you know, being perfect and everything has to be 100%, it's never worked. Whenever I've just got the messy action done, the needle's actually moved and I've made a lot of progress. So you need to switch from a perfectionist mindset to a progress over perfectionist mindset. It's never going to be perfect. I'll show you an example. So here's a graph of one of my online fat loss clients. And as you can see, it's very up and down, up and down, up and down. But the trend line is going down and his weight, eventually he lost 10, 15 kilos. I can't remember at this point. But no one is the exception. This is the case for me on my diet. I've lost 17 kilos. There has been days where I've gone over slightly. And I've told myself, okay, that's fine. I'll get up the next day and I'll just continue and carry on and keep making progress. just understand that no one is ever perfect, so don't expect yourself to be the exception to that rule. The next tip to overcome binge eating is increasing your level of mindfulness. So, like I said earlier, binge eating happens when you're mindless and your brain just switches off. You turn into a zombie, an animal almost, that just only seeks that pleasure you get from food. So in order to combat that, we need to become more mindful. And how do we become more mindful? We become more present. And how can you become more present? You can practice meditation. So there's a lot of misconceptions around meditation. People say it's all hippie and woo-woo, but it's one of the most studied and researched practices in the world that increases your level of mindfulness, and there's so many other benefits, but I'm going to be focusing on how it relates to binge eating. So you don't need any fancy apps on your phone or YouTube videos. All you need is a timer, and start off on just 1 minute. Then work your way up to maybe 5 or 10 minutes later down the line when you've got in the habit. So the way it works is you start off focusing on something. So this could be the breath. And then what happens is your mind will lose focus and you'll get lost in thought. And this is where most people quit and they say, I can't do meditation. It sucks. Like, I'm just not good at it. But the purpose of meditation is to go from this, point where you're lost in thought to realizing that, and then refocusing back on the breath. And that 4-step process of focusing on the breath, getting lost in thought, realizing you're lost in thought, and then focusing back on the breath, that's almost like 1 rep. That's like a bicep curl for your brain. And every time you do one of those reps, you're increasing your skill of mindfulness. And that's going to help you combat binge eating, because you're going to recognize more when those thought patterns happen before a binge, and you're going to be able to save yourself from that. And relating to getting those thought patterns before a binge, when you realize you're in that scenario where you're getting all those cravings and you're feeling very triggered, what you need to do is separate yourself from that environment. As soon as you recognize that switch has gone off in your brain, you need to get yourself out of the house, go for a drive, listen to some music, go on a walk, maybe record a voice memo of how you felt before you almost binged, so the next day you can listen back and recognize exactly what those thought patterns were. But yeah, the most powerful thing you can do in this scenario is remove yourself from that environment. And the next way is to reduce instant gratification. So like I said earlier, all those bad habits, reduce your level of baseline dopamine. So what you need to do is trade and swap those out for good habits that naturally release dopamine. So things like socializing, going outside, getting sunlight, practicing something new. It could be a martial art or an instrument. Anything that naturally releases dopamine, gets you in a flow state, gets you away from thinking about food all the time. So you need other areas in your life that give you fulfillment and pleasure that's not only food. Now, to end off this video, I'm going to go back to that perfectionist mindset part, because there will inevitably be a time where you probably binge again. I told myself so many times that I was going to quit, and I failed over and over again. And that's probably what kept me in the cycle, is this perfectionist mindset of, I'm going to quit, it's never going to happen again. But that was so gullible of me, because I built up a pattern, and to break that, it takes time and effort. So understand you probably will binge again, and that's okay. But what you need to do is just gradually over time implement these tactics, and the frequency will decrease. And if that does happen where you're binging less and less, you're making progress. It's a good thing. See that as progress in itself. Another powerful thing you can do after you binge eat is get a journal out the next day, the next morning, and then write down, what was my exact thought process before I binge ate, and how did I feel during the binge? Like, what was going through my mind? And then how do I feel now? Like, write down everything in as much detail as possible. So when you look back at that, you'll be reminded of the pain that you're feeling, because the pain you feel after a binge is temporary, and then you forget about it. So the next time you binge, you kind of go, oh, this won't be that bad. And then you're quickly reminded after that it is that bad. So write it down in depth, and that will help you a lot. And even just going over it in your head, it can feel like you're starting a new chapter when you actually write it down on paper. Lastly, do not restrict yourself the next day. Do not think, okay, I binged last night, so I'm going to fast the whole of the next day. Don't do that, because your hunger signaling is already so high. So if you try and reduce your calories the next day, it's just going to repeat that cycle, and you're going to dig yourself into a deeper hole. So just go back to the regular amount of calories you were eating before. Get back on track. In a few days, you'll feel great again. That weight will come down. Understand most of that weight on the scale is water weight and not fat. It will be maybe a couple of kilos heavier, but that is all water. That's your body holding onto water. And yeah, that was the video, guys. Hopefully you did find it valuable. If you're struggling with binge eating, I truly hope that you overcome it, because I've experienced it before and it's not a nice thing to experience. It can be very isolating, and yeah, so I truly wish you the best with that. If you've been struggling to lose weight for a long time, what I would suggest is clicking the top link in my description. That will take you to book a one-on-one consultation call with me. I've helped guys lose 5, 10, 20 plus kilos in the past, so I can help you do that too. If you're new here, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.